When a servant truly believes that what Allah wills will inevitably occur, and that nothing can prevent His decree, and that Allah is supreme in His command, his reliance upon Allah strengthens, and his heart finds peace with Allah. This fundamental principle becomes evident throughout the story of Joseph, where every event demonstrates this great purpose. From the very beginning, when Jacob advised his son Joseph not to relate his dream to his brothers, lest they plot against him, saying, "Indeed, Satan is a clear enemy to mankind," we see this principle at work. Despite Jacob's precautions, the brothers still plotted against Joseph, and what Jacob feared came to pass, yet Allah remained supreme in His command. The brothers threw Joseph into the well intending harm, but Allah decreed that a caravan would pass by, rescue Joseph, and sell him in Egypt. Thus Joseph was transported from the depths of a well to a palace. What an enormous difference between the well and the palace, demonstrating that Allah is supreme in His command. In the palace, the wife of the minister attempted to seduce Joseph, closing the doors and calling him to her. But Joseph said, "I seek refuge in Allah," and Allah remained supreme in His command. She could not achieve what she desired because Allah willed protection and good for Joseph. Despite his clear innocence, when they saw his shirt torn from behind and knew the woman had pursued him, Joseph was still imprisoned unjustly, yet Allah remained supreme in His command. In prison, 2 young men entered with him, and he called them to Allah. He asked one whom he thought would be released to remember him before his master, but Satan made him forget, and Joseph remained in prison for several years. Joseph wanted to leave prison and instructed the cupbearer to mention him to the king, but Allah willed for him to remain in prison for several more years, a period of preparation that contained good for him. Allah is supreme in His command. After years passed in prison with no one asking about him, when hope seemed lost, Allah decreed that the king would see a dream that no one could interpret. The cupbearer then remembered Joseph's ability to interpret dreams and informed them of Joseph in prison. Joseph interpreted the king's dream and was released from prison, not just released, but elevated to the position of minister in the state. From being sold as a slave in Egypt's slave market, becoming owned by Egypt's minister, entering prison, Joseph rose to become a minister in the state, equivalent to a modern economic minister. The very position most needed during the time of crisis was given to him. Allah is supreme in His command. Those who yesterday threw him in the well today came to him seeking food and provisions, saying, "Distress has touched us and our family, and we have come with goods poor in quality. But give us full measure and be charitable to us. Indeed, Allah rewards the charitable." How remarkable the difference! Yesterday they conspired against him and threw him in the well. Today they appeared before him showing need and humility. Allah is supreme in His command. This story teaches us the foundation of reliance upon Allah mentioned in Surah Hud. The greatest connection between these 2 chapters is that Surah Hud is a chapter about relying on Allah, while Surah Joseph establishes the principle of reliance on Allah through an entire comprehensive story demonstrating that Allah is supreme in His command. Both chapters prominently feature the concept of monotheism. In Surah Hud, the prophets call to monotheism and reliance upon Allah, which is the essence of monotheism and servitude to Allah, is emphasized. Similarly, Surah Joseph clearly features monotheism as its purpose. When a person's heart truly connects with Allah alone, believing that what Allah wills happens and what He does not will does not happen, reliance upon Allah grows great in the heart, hope in Allah strengthens, and fear of Allah increases, because all affairs belong to Allah. This leads to submission and humility before Allah alone, and worship of Allah alone, because all command belongs to Allah. Throughout the events and verses of this chapter, we see this principle repeatedly. When Jacob was tested, he said, "So patience is most fitting." And Allah is the one sought for help against that which you describe. This is monotheism and reliance upon Allah. The story of Joseph stands unique among Quranic stories as the only complete narrative told in its entirety within a single chapter, with the chapter named after this noble prophet. Other prophetic stories are distributed throughout the Qur'an according to each chapter's purposes and themes, but this story was kept whole. Why was this story singled out and not divided like others? According to As-Suyuti, it was because the companions specifically requested it, asking the Prophet to tell them a complete story they could enjoy from beginning to end. The complete presentation of Joseph's story scenes serves the chapter's main purpose. The principle, Allah is supreme in His command, can only be fully established and firmly rooted in hearts when heard from beginning to end. If we took only one scene, like the brothers plotting and throwing Joseph in the well, or his elevation to the palace, we could say, Allah is supreme in His command, but this wouldn't achieve the complete effect. Only by gathering all these scenes together, all relating to this single purpose, does this principle become firmly established in the heart through scene after scene, each demonstrating that Allah is supreme in His command. This story also parallels the situation of Prophet Muhammad and his companions. Joseph was opposed by those closest to him, his brothers, just as the Prophet was opposed by his family and relatives in Mecca. Joseph was thrown into the well, living in desolation and hardship, just as the Prophet and his companions experienced hardship, desolation, and torture in Mecca, as if thrown into a well during their boycott in the valley of Abu Talib for years without adequate food or water. Joseph was expelled from his homeland of Palestine to Egypt, just as the Prophet and his companions migrated from Mecca to Medina. Joseph ultimately had a good ending with his family reunited, just as happened to the Prophet and his companions when he entered Mecca victorious, saying, "What do you think I will do with you?" They replied, "You are a noble brother and son of a noble brother." He said, "Go, for you are free." Just as Joseph told his brothers, "No reproach will there be upon you today." This story serves as a life methodology for Muslims. This world we live in is a house of trial. He who created death and life to test you as to which of you is best indeed. Jacob was tested with separation from Joseph, his most beloved son, and lost his sight. Joseph was tested with his brothers plotting against him, with slavery, with being sold as a slave, despite being noble. The son of the noble, son of the noble, son of the noble. He faced the trial of the well, the trial of the minister's wife and desires, the trial of prison, the trial of prosperity when he became Egypt's minister, and the trial of meeting those who wronged him when he encountered his brothers, whether to forgive them or not. All these varied trials and afflictions represent the types of tests humans face in life. How was Joseph throughout all this? He maintained certainty in Allah, knowing that Allah is supreme in His command. He was patient, relying upon his Lord, and even called people to Allah while in prison. This is how a Muslim should live, with this principle in his life. Allah is supreme in His command. All affairs belong to Allah. Allah moves me from one state to another, from the well's depth to the palace, from palace to prison, from prison to ministry and kingship. This is how Allah moves you in this world from state to state, so you know you are under Allah's will. Submit your affairs to Allah, rely upon Allah, be patient, continue adhering to religion and calling to Allah.